So as I alluded to just a second ago, we're going to open up our next guest speaker. You've heard him on many calls, and the reason you've heard him on many calls is because he has that motivating style, and when you hear him talk, I always get flooded with text messages where people are telling me how awesome of a job he did. But awesome producer, started with Ephes not too long ago. He's coming up on his third full year with Ephes, and consistently has put up over 200,000 since starting. He was trained by Mr. David Lloyd, who you guys have heard as well. Had a massive month again last month. He is consistent as always. We're going to have Ricky Ballard on the call. Ricky's going to talk about, and get your pen and paper handy, he's going to talk about the 4 SPs, the Sam Perry of Final Expense. And I think you guys are really going to like this. So without further ado, I'm going to open up Mr. Ricky Ballard. Ricky, are you there?
I am. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ricky.
I'm grateful to be on the call this morning. I've gathered some thoughts, and I hope that they'll help you guys in this path of Final Expense. I'm going to piggyback a little bit of what Eric said. It's funny that sometimes our thoughts align. I was going to start this morning with a poem that I used all the time working with my kids, and it's called "The Man in the Glass," and it's by Peter Dell Wimbrow Sr. And so let me share this with you. It's a little bit about accountability, and it's a little bit about the man in the glass. It says, "When you get what you want in your struggle for self and the world makes you king for a day, just go to the mirror and look at yourself and see what that man has to say. For it isn't your mother or father or wife whose judgment upon you must pass. The fellow whose verdict counts most in your life is the one staring back from the glass. He's the fellow to please, never mind all the rest, for he's with you clear to the end, and you've passed your most difficult and dangerous test if the man in the glass is your friend. You may fool the whole world down the pathway of years and get pats on the back as you go, but your final reward will be heartache and tears if you've cheated the man in the glass." In this business, it's so essential that you come up with a system of accountability, a system of integrity, that when you look yourself in the glass, that you can hold yourself accountable and feel honorable with who you are and what you're doing. I want to start with this morning. It says, leaders need to understand how profoundly they affect people, how their optimism and pessimism are equally infectious, how directly they set the tone and spirit of everyone around them. It's your ship. When you think about this business, sometimes we feel like we're on an island. And so your optimism and pessimism are infectious. And you have to find a way to stay optimistic in this business. And I feel that the easiest way to do that is come up with some simple processes in what you're doing so that you have a system to evaluate yourself rather than putting blame on other things, where you can put the blame on yourself and say, okay, what did I do wrong and how can I make this work? And so what I've came up with are the 4 SPs of Final Expense. And they are, number one, that we're selling to number one, simple people. That we have a simple product. That we must give a simple presentation. And that we need speedy pay. Okay? So let's get into the first one, simple people. The market that we work a lot of times are folks that are on fixed incomes. Most of them are over the age of 60. Most of them are lower middle class to some of them dang near living in poverty. Most of the time, the folks that I run into are lacking in education. And so you may ask, well, why does that matter? Why does it matter to be able to identify that the people we're working with are simple people? Well, probably because most of you on this call are not simple people. If you're a good salesman, if you're charismatic and you're eloquent, you probably are well-read. You probably are keeping up with current events. And you have to be able to become a chameleon in these homes. You have to be able to adapt in these homes. And so you have to identify what you're doing. You don't have to have a doctorate in insurance to do this. You don't. What you need to do is be able to identify the people that you're selling to and be able to adapt to their environment. You can come into all different types of houses, different races, different religions. But there's one thing most of these folks, I think, have in common, is that most of them are on a fixed income, and most of them are very humble people. And so my first advice for the first SP is that when you're working with simple people, they're humble. So you have to be humble. The second SP is that we have to have simple products. Guys, Final Expense is a simple product. We're not selling 31-page app, term insurance, and all this other mortgage protection stuff. We're selling a very, very simple product. And, let's talk just for a minute. I mean, we just heard about a simple product, the American Eagle. I mean, shut the front door, guys. Are you kidding? We can go in there, give a quote. If it's correct, get their information, and by the time you do the e-app and send it to America, within 2 minutes you'll have a response. But the whole process really takes 7 minutes before you know if they're approved or not. How much more simple of a product can there be? With Royal Neighbors, the phone interviews, and you know immediately if you in the conversation with a certificate number. I can go on and on. Foresters, Transamerica, Great Western, National Guardian Life. These are all very, very simple products for us to be able to sell if you'll just study the product a little bit. Don't make the product more complicated than what it is. It is what it is. And when you get into the home, sell a simple product to a simple people. The third part is kind of the meat and potatoes, where I'm going to spend just a little bit of time, is having a simple presentation. And what I've come up with for my simple presentation is that it's a 5-step process to making money. There's 5 steps to making money in this business in the presentation. The first one, guys, is at the door. You have to establish credibility. So number one in the simple presentation is establish credibility. When you get there, you're supposed to be there. You're licensed with your state to be there to share information with them to help improve their lives. Establish that credibility and get in the door. Once you get in the door, slow down a little bit. Put your briefcase down, sit down at the kitchen table, and build a relationship in the house. Get to know them. Get to know their needs. Get to know their income. Share personal stories of your own with them. Number 3 is present simply. My presentation, guys, is very simple whenever I get to this point. After I've established credibility, after I've built relationships, my presentation is very simple. I tell them, look, I'm here to do 1 of 3 things to help you and your family. The first thing that I want to do is evaluate your current coverage. The second thing is if you have good current coverage, I want to make sure you have enough to meet your final expenses. And if you don't, add a little to it. Finally, if you don't have any at all, any final expense coverage at all, I want to get you some coverage that'll take care of you and your family's needs. And then I ask them, what is, where do you fall? Do you have current coverage? Do you have a policy? Do you have none at all? And that kind of guides me into my next step. Once I get through the evaluation process, kind of figure out where they're at, you have to identify where they're at before you can take off and start selling them a product. Well, that's when I go right to, and this is going to sound very elementary, but I want you to know it works really well for me. Most of them have heard this song before, and I always tell them, have you ever heard the old song, the head, shoulders, knees, and toes? And then we kind of get a little laughing and giggling, and they'll tell a story. Oh, we used to sing that in church or whatever. Okay, and I say, okay, well, let's just stop at the top. And I just ask them questions. Any Alzheimer's, dementia, or anything like that? Are you taking any medications for your head? And they're, oh, no. Then I go through the shoulders, lungs, heart, things, and it keeps me specific. Go to their stomach for internal cancers, diabetes, down through, go down to their legs, any neuropathy problems, any amputation because of toes. By the time I'm done with head, shoulders, knees, and toes, I know what direction I'm going with my client. I know what company I'm going to go to. And then the 5th thing is, sometimes, which is the hardest and the most uncomfortable, is getting a check in your hand. And this is what works for me. I just tell them, hey, the way that we do business is we set every one of our clients on a bank draft. Who do you currently bank with? And then if you get a rebuttal, I rebut immediately, and we work that out. But I don't dance around that question. I just tell them, hey, I set every one of my clients on a bank draft. Who do you currently bank with? And so that's my 5 steps. Establish credibility, build relationships, present simply, head, shoulders, knees, and toes, and get a check in your hand. There's another segment of this, and on February 9th, this month, the 9th of this month, I'm going to do a plug and learn, and it's going to be called The Good, Bad, and the Ugly. and it's how I decide which direction I'm going to head after the presentation, after I do that part of the presentation. But there's just not enough time on this call. The last SP, guys, is speedy pay. This is very important. You have to be paid quick in this business because of your overhead. And so when we're talking about companies that are going to pay you fast, that's where you want to send your business. Place your business with the companies that are going to have a 48 turnaround on your checks. Focus on those things and make sure they happen. Very simply today, guys, I just want to do a quick overview. The 4 SPs of final expense: simple people, simple product, simple presentation, and speedy pay. And the final quote for the day, I always like to end with somebody smarter than me, is this. No matter how educated, talented, rich, or cool you believe you are, how you treat people tells all. Integrity is everything. And so, guys, as we go out this month, keep it simple. You know, I used to always tell my football players, keep it simple, student. In construction business, it's keep it simple, stupid. The reality is just keep it simple. Be passionate about what you're doing, and I hope you have the best of luck this month, and that this business can change your life like it's changed mine. Chase, thanks for the time today.